Today, how can it be anything but a good day? And for we dads who people are lavishing things on, and Pastor greeted me today with 3 cards that I had no way of knowing how do you get a Father's Day card when you're in New Hampshire and your son's in Afghanistan and your daughter's in Kansas City? When in this feeble mind, it doesn't compute. I can't make that happen, but somehow it happened. And so God bless those that made it happen, and thank you, Pastor, for making that happen. And I just afraid something was going on behind me and I wasn't getting to be part of it, you know. I want to be part of everything that's going on. But I want to share and thank you for all your kind words, and thank you for your faithfulness to support Marianne and I. And Marianne's at home in Florida with her mom. Mom's soon to be 85 and has dementia. And so for the last 3 years, Mom's lived with us, and so I've been out doing a lot of ministry by myself. And I'm not going to have a pity party, but it's 6 weeks I've been out on the road by myself, and I'm miserable. I want you to know that.
You're miserable. You love to pick up on that.
I love my wife, and you know, 10 years she and I were on the road together, and then when we're home, we're together. And I don't like being out here by myself. I love being in New England. This is the part she misses the most. When we do the Americade rally and then come over to Laconia, she misses this the most. When I told her it was 49 degrees, I think this morning, and she said it was already 85 at home. Now, I want you to know, I miss the 85-degree weather. But, boy, it was great sleeping last night, wasn't it? But I hear y'all are going to have summer like Wednesday and Thursday of this week, and then you go back to your normal weather. So, I do want to share with you, and as you know, Happy Father's Day to all you fathers. And if you've served in the military, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you doing that. Curtis shared with me this morning that Wednesday he goes to meet with a Coast Guard recruiter. And I'm excited about the fact that Curtis may be interested in serving in our military. That's very commendable. I'm a believer that every student that graduates from high school, unless they have some legitimate physical ailment, ought to have to spend 2 years in the military. I think that would teach great patriotism. It would teach them respect and honor if they didn't learn that at home. And that's a whole nother message that I'll preach some other time. But anyway, I do want to share with you this morning, and I do have a message. I'm actually written out on paper, and I mean and at the very top of it says, "I love Marianne." It's always a constant reminder to me how much I love my wife. But I want to share with you first of all that I was in a church not too long ago down home, and so y'all know well, I should say all y'all, because that means I'm talking to everybody. If I say y'all, that's just you'uns. So, but I was in this church down home, and they had told me that there was a toddler in church that was a nuisance. And y'all have probably met that toddler before, or you've seen him. But, I thought, well, yeah, I've heard of that before. There's a toddler that's a nuisance. But this child, from the time I walked in the door, I knew which child they had told me about. It was obvious. And it didn't make any difference what anybody did. This child was a nuisance. I mean, I was there about 5 minutes, and I prayed, Lord, give me the spirit of slap so I could give it away. I wanted this kid to have it for free. I was just going to, as my mama said, I'll slap you in the next week and you'll have to walk back. So, and this child was very deserving, and his parents could not contain him. And it didn't make any difference during the worship. This kid was up, he was running around, he was crawling underneath, and he doing all those things, and his dad would grab him occasionally and set him back in the seat to no avail. And finally, the pastor's up preaching. And so we've had about 45 minutes of this kid being a nuisance. And, of course, they don't sit at the back of the church. They sit up on the front. Of course, these chairs are much more cushioned up here. Do you all know that? Because nobody sits on them. True story. So anyway, they're in the second row, and the dad is finally, you can just see, he's had it. He snatches up this kid and puts him under his arm, and he turns and starts to walk out. Now, I thought sure that a standing ovation was in order. But the kid is squirming as best he can and gets to about here, and all of a sudden in his best little voice he says, "Oh, y'all pray for me." And Dad kept right on going out the back. Now, I wanted a video camera. I wanted to see what happened out. But you know what? Somebody would have called 800 child abuse on the dad. One person would have. All the rest of them were saying, "Beat him some more, Dad." But you see, this child, this 4-year-old realized he had one shot. And he thought, "I better take it here. All y'all pray for me." Because he knew what was going to happen. Well deserved. But he knew what was going to happen. And so I want to ask you today, what would you do if you only had one shot left? Now, militarily, when you're down to one shot, you're in trouble. In life, when you're down to one shot, you're in trouble. But let's look at what the scripture says. If you look with me at Luke chapter 23. And Dr. Luke is sharing Jesus Christ's last moments. He's already been nailed to the cross. He's hanging there. And who knows who was hanging next to him? Criminals. Real criminals. Thieves. They had been caught in the act of stealing, and so their punishment was to hang on a tree. And the Old Testament said, "Cursed is he who hangs on a tree." That was the worst penalty that you could possibly have gotten, was to be crucified. And it wasn't done in private. This was done in public for all the world to see. But Luke says in chapter 23, verse 39, he says, "One of the criminals who hung on there hurled insults at Jesus. 'Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us.' But the other criminal rebuked him and said, 'Don't you fear God, since you are under the same sentence? We're punished justly, for we're getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong.' Then he asked, 'Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.' And you remember what Jesus said? 'Today you will be in paradise with me.'" You see, one thief on the cross, he just wanted a quick fix. The other thief realized, "I got one shot at this. There's one shot I have left." And so I asked Jesus. And Jesus said, "Today you'll be in paradise with me." You see, it's that simple. We make this so difficult to accept Jesus anymore. We get visitors that come into our church that don't know, come here from Sikkim, and we start talking churchese. And that's worse than Chinese. Because at least they know you're speaking a foreign language. Churchese, they don't know where you're coming from. Hello. I'm talking to all y'all. Because all y'all are guilty of talking churchese. We all do it. We mean it well, but the unsaved don't have a clue what we're talking about. When we're standing on the front porch over at the Cornerstone Church, we don't talk about salvation. We don't even talk about going to church. One of the greatest things we do, we have a new book called the Book of Hope. We don't give away the Bible anymore. Sorry. What we give away is a compilation of the 4 Gospels in easy to read, easy to understand literature. It's not a great big thick book. And what we find is these guys will read it because it doesn't say Bible on it. And that's what we want them to do, is read it. And so when we're standing on the front porch, what I've been saying to the guys this week is, "Have you read a good book lately?" Excuse me. Most of those guys haven't read any book lately. But they'll say, "Well, no." I said, "Well, here's a good one. Try reading that." And just leave them with their coffee or water. And next thing you know, they're thumbing through. If you've ever been to the Weirs where we minister, there's a bridge, a walking bridge that goes over. Well, that's where they line up the porta potties. And then they have what we call bathroom boys. They have men or women that sit there all day long, keeping those bathrooms clean, giving away mints and candies with a tip jar. And so every day I'd walk over first thing and say, "Hey, how you doing today?" "Well, I'm doing pretty good." I said, "Okay, well, listen, we got free coffee and water, and at noon, we're going to be eating over here, and I'll bring you back something that we're going to eat for lunch today." Nice. I said, "Really? Really?" I said, "Yeah, and here's something to read while you're sitting here." And just walk off. You see, there's one shot that I had in this young man's life. And the beauty was, every day they rotate these people because some bathroom boy areas make better tips than others. So they don't want one guy getting all the money. So they rotate them. So every day it was somebody new that I got to go up and do the same thing, offer them something to drink, a bite of something to eat, and the Word of God. And every time they'd come back over and say, you know, I was reading in here about something. I said, well, yeah, you need to read farther. Well, I got them on the line. I'm reeling them in, but, you know, I like the thrill of the catch, too, you know. It's no fun just reel them in and take the fish off the hook, you know. Let's let them play a little bit. And so I just tell them they need to read more. And I know all y'all carry a track in your back pocket, right? Like this, an answer track. People are always coming up at the weirs and saying, hey, how do we get out of here? I said, well, here's the answer. And, of course, they're trying to figure out how to get their motorcycle out of here. And, Jason, you and your mom and dad have been on the porch with us enough time. Sometimes you'll see a motorcycle go by 4 times. Because they can come in, and the only way out is to, but they can also loop around and come down Tower Street, and they're right back where and then they come to us again, and we kind of, yep, here they go again. And the second time it's usually, wait, we must have missed the turnoff. That's why we're not, you know, so they go back up a second time, which is, it's hilarious to us. About the 4th time, you finally think, we really ought to step out there and say, to get out of town, you have to go this way. Or they'll say, hey, how do you get out of here? Well, it's true. This is how you get out of here. Oh, you meant on your motorcycle. I'm sorry, you have to go back out this way. Well, this year they kind of robbed us of our glory. They have police cadets now standing out there with an orange vest on, helping these people to get out and to not drive through the sign that says, do not enter. And there's 2 of them with orange barricades. And these people, can I go around and... Not all of them were on Hondas, but some were. It's just amazing to me what people will do. I mean, the sign says, do not enter. Big orange barricades. 2 signs, not just 1. They know these people. Can I drive through there? Did all y'all hear what he said? It's good that you didn't. Anyway. Some of these people only have 1 shot. And we're the ones that are responsible to pour into their lives. Amen. Now, Mother's Day, I got invited to preach, and that's only the 2nd time since I've been doing this for 14 years that anybody wanted me to preach on Mother's Day. You know, that's not your missionary Sunday. Kind of like Father's Day is not usually a missionary Sunday unless you live in New Hampshire, and then it is, of course. But there were 6 people came forward and asked Christ into their lives on Mother's Day. And one lady sat there next to what appeared to be her son, but you never want to make an assumption. And when I gave the invitation, he got up and came forward, and this woman sat through the whole thing just bawling like a baby. I mean, snot bubbles and the boo-hoo-hoo and crying, you know, and I'm thinking, that woman should have been at the altar. I mean, she knows she's guilty. She's sitting there. This was her 1 shot. And did she take it? No. She sat there and cried like a baby. The thing was, this woman was a pillar of the church, and her Mother's Day request for her son was to come to church. Well, he came and got saved. You see, it was 1 shot the woman took when he said, Mom, what can I do for you for Mother's Day? She said, come to church. Praise God. Moms, Mother's Day's coming next year. If you want something, God bless you, son. Can y'all hear it in my throat? Thank you. I hate to take a drink of water in front of y'all because all y'all will think you got to go out and get a drink of water, but. No, we're used to it. Okay. Thank you. You know what? It's the cold night air. I really think that's what messes with my throat. But anyway, this woman had 1 shot, so she invited her son to come to church with her. I want you to know, over 30 years ago, I sat in Las Vegas, Nevada, in my brother-in-law's kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the sports page. And the invitation he gave me was simply this: would you want to go to church with us today? That's all he said. He didn't quote John 3:16. He didn't open his Bible up and say, read this. He didn't give me a tract. All he said was, would you want to go to church with me today? Now, how theological is that, Pastor? How much Bible knowledge do you have to say, would you come to church with me today? And you know what? The world is dying and going to hell because we're not taking one shot at inviting them to church. And you know what? When you invite them to church and they come, it's not your responsibility that they get saved. It's pastor's. So if they don't get saved, blame him. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Pastor. That's not how that works. The thing is, when you invite them to church and they come, it's the Holy Spirit then who will minister to them. And you know, I've said a lot of times when there's been visitors, I meet them at the back door and say, listen, come back next Sunday and hear some real good preaching, will you? I'm just the visitor. You need to hear the pastor. And you know what? In a lot of, I mean, not that I'm not a good preacher. Well, okay, we're not going to vote on that this morning, but anyway, you need to hear the shepherd of this flock. Don't judge the church just off of a guest speaker. That's very unfair to the church, and it's unfair to me too. Unless you want to follow me around the country, you know, next Sunday I'm preaching in Bluefield, Virginia. If you want to be there, you know, come on. I'm sure Pastor Tim would love to have visitors come in his church, but you got to take the one shot every time you've got it. Every time, take the one shot. We need to be out there winning the lost. And I know it's simple, easy multiplication. If each one would invite one, what would the attendance be next Sunday? Now, double. There's a mathematician right up here. It's not rocket science. It's a simple taking that one shot and saying, would you come to church with me? Because nobody wants to walk into a building that they don't know anybody. And you know what? When you invite somebody to church, pick them up, stand at the door, so when they come, they see you at the door. Make it a friendly, invitational place. Don't make them wander through to the front row to find you. Because they're like a termite and a yo-yo when they get to church. Okay, a goose in a fog? Is that a better... I don't think y'all understood a termite and a yo-yo, but anyway... You know, I am who I am. I'm sorry, it's all y'all get, you know. I think it's too many motorcycle fumes, or I don't know what it is. Pastor asked me last night, over the last 14 years we've averaged, I think we ended up figuring our average is about 20,000 miles a year on a motorcycle. And if it was weather like this every day, I could just stand up and shout. But it's not, it's rain. At Americade, I got hailed on. It's cold. And y'all know what happens to a guy riding a motorcycle when it rains? We get wet. That's it. I don't care how expensive your rain gear is, you get wet. But you know what? The lost are out there riding, getting wet. So that's why we're out there, is to reach the lost, to share with them that there is hope, that there is a future, that no, they're not going to go to hell and spend it there with their friends. Because even if they think that's what hell is going to be, hell is a place of torment. So you know what that means? That Satan's going to say, okay, just go in that door and wait for your friends. They'll be here in a little bit. Guess what? Eternity waiting in that room for your friends. And you know what most guys say? Well, that's all right, I'm going to ride my Harley all over hell. You know what? I used to think Harleys don't make it to hell, but recently I think maybe they do. I don't know. Every time it breaks down, you're sitting beside the road, you think, yep, this thing's going to hell. But you know what? Motorcycles don't make it. Pianos don't make it. Guitars don't make it. It's all hay and stubble. It's going to pass away. But you know what? They're going to be stuck in a godless eternity that's tormentation for them. They're going to be so miserable in hell. And I know that part of the torment is going to be, I should have listened to that crazy motorcycle guy. There was a guy on the porch this week, and he said to me, he said, I don't believe there's a God. I said, really? He said, no, I don't believe it. He said, I'm an atheist. I said, okay, so what you're telling me is you believe in something is there so you can say, I don't believe he's there. Oh, he said, I never thought about it that way. I said, you have to believe in God to say, I don't believe there is a God. He said, yeah, okay, well, that's really where I am then. He said, yeah, there's a God, but I don't believe in him. I said, okay, then you're an agnostic. Don't tell anybody you're an atheist. He said, an agnostic? And I'm glad he didn't say spell it, you know what I mean? So I said, yeah, and it's okay to be that. But I said, let me ask you a question. If I'm wrong in what I've been believing and preaching for the last 30 years, and I die, and as you say, I just become worm food, what's my loss? I said, I guess nothing, except you maybe spent a little time in church and you gave away 10% of your income. And I said, yeah, that'd be the worst. But I said, let me ask you a question. What happens if you die and you're wrong and I'm right? Ding. You know what I mean? A light went on and it's like, oh, I never thought about what if I'm wrong and you're right. I said, well, read any good books lately? Read this one. And he walked off the porch going, and you know what? That's what God's called me to do, is plant the seeds. Take one more shot into somebody's life. There was a young lady that came by, and she was a vendor. Every morning she walked by. First morning she came in and she said, hey, I hear y'all got a shower that I can use. Everybody that's there, because I'm the guy in charge, they turned and looked at me and said, and I said, no, first of all, you all know what an easy up is? One of those tent things that they say it's easy up, that you stretch it out and pinch your fingers, and then you got to try and raise the legs so that it makes a nice little tent covering. Well, then we hang 4 tarps inside there and 2 shower curtains, and we have a magic garden wand that hangs up and bends down. That's our shower. Well, you know what? I hate even putting my wife in there, but the church doesn't have a shower. Oh, and by the way, we run a garden hose in and hook it to the sink in the bathroom. So, you know, my wife always says, Mark, if you tell all your business, you won't have no business. But anyway, and I sleep on an air mattress on the floor in a Sunday school classroom. Also, I can take one more shot into somebody's life that doesn't know Jesus Christ. And so me sleeping on an air mattress, oh, by the way, did I tell you that about 30 minutes after I laid down on it the first night, there was about this much air mattress between me and the floor. Yeah, they loaned us this air mattress and it didn't hold air. So I thought, you know what? I got a pump. So I hooked the pump up and thought, well, I'll just let that run all night. That was worse than the Harleys going by the place. I said, no, I can't do that. So I used to ride a Honda, so I'm not real smart at some things, but it was a good thought, at least. But we do this, now don't get tickled up here, I'll get tickled, y'all. We do this because there are over 10 million Americans riding motorcycles today, and we know that just over 1 million of them are saved, born-again people going to heaven. So there's 9 million Americans that we're trying to reach with the gospel. And I know that at least 8 million of them went by the building sometime after dark and revved up their engines for us to hear. It's just uncanny. But where we are at Laconia, they're either going out of town or they're turning and going up the hill. So they think it's their duty to let us hear their pipes. I'm just thankful Shirley Dyer comes over on her gold wing. I enjoy the quiet. Hey, and were you all over there the other day with John driving and you on the back and didn't stop? Yeah. You were seen. Yep. Yeah, we saw you. We saw you, huh? Didn't honk, didn't stop by, just right on by. And they were on the gold wing, so they did it quiet like we wouldn't know it was them. Somebody says, there goes John and Shirley. I said, and they didn't stop? Why? What were you on? Which, the V-Rod? Oh, John has a Harley trike now? Oh. Why is it the adopted son's always the last one to know, Jason? And you know what? It's so good to see Jason because he moved down to within 8 hours of my house, and I never saw him in Georgia. I only see him in New Hampshire. But God is good, isn't he? Let us have one more shot to see each other. What are you doing with your one shot? Maybe you're in a small group. Are you taking that one shot to minister to someone in that group and invite someone else in? How about the Royal Rangers? What are you going to do at Vacation Bible School? Who's the leader of Vacation Bible School? Do you have all the help you need? She needs help. Somebody get up off your spiritual and volunteer to help. She's wants 35 kids to come to this thing. She needs help with that. Somebody that aren't working, help her with it. Is it day or night? It's during the daytime. Come on, come help. You say, well, I'm not a good teacher. You know what? She didn't say she needs 35, or she doesn't need teachers as much. She needs somebody to help the teacher. You know, I used to love to, when I was pastor, I'll make the Kool-Aid every day. And you know what the ladies would say? Okay, pastor, come on. I made 35 gallons of Kool-Aid. I said, you didn't tell me we had 200 kids coming to this thing. I'm standing there stirring Kool-Aid like crazy. But you know what? We had one shot to speak into those children's lives, because the majority of those children didn't go to church anywhere. So I stirred Kool-Aid, 35 gallons a day. For 35 kids, what do you need, 5 gallons of Kool-Aid? Okay, and only add half the sugar. Think about kids, sugar, yeah. Or give it to them at the end of VBS. Don't give it to them at the front of VBS. Bing, 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 bing. You know, that's when you need 2 teachers or 3 per room. But volunteer to help. You know, I saw a list of things that you need on there. You know what? I'm going to give her $20 when I leave here today and tell her, it said money, any amount. That's good. It's the very last. She'll take money at any amount. You know what? I want to help with your Vacation Bible School. I want to help take one more shot at winning some child to Jesus Christ. And that child then going home and saying to their parents, you got to come to this. And you're going to have some kind of little deal at the end so their parents can come to all that. And you know what? Some parent might get saved because some child got saved because I bought $20 worth of markers or Kool-Aid or whatever it is. But invest in someone else that's taking a shot. People say, oh, I can never do what you do. I said, okay, just keep putting missions offerings in so that my wife and I can do what we do out here. And I shared this with Pastor last night, and I haven't shared this. My wife and I are $900 a month under budget right now. So we're doing more ministry with less money. And it's kind of worked out good that she can't be with me, because the only thing I'm spending money on is fuel. You know, I have a very good friend. Pastor took me out to dinner last night and made my wife mad because we went to her very favorite Mexican restaurant in the whole world. Oh, no. Margarita. Oh, sorry, Jason. Now I got 2 people mad at me. But we didn't sit in the jail cell. Well, we sat outside last night and froze to death, by the way. But we're doing more with less. But you know what? God's still God. He's allowing us to take one shot, and we're ministering in people's lives and making a difference. And anybody God will put in my path, I'll share Jesus with them. You know, I go to restaurants and people, you know, and then I start witnessing to the waitress, and they say, do you ever not witness to people? I said, well, yeah, when I'm in bed. You know, if God puts somebody in front of me, I'm going to witness to that person. If nothing else, leave them a tract to share with them the good news. That's why I like the answer track. Everybody's got questions? I got the answer. It's Jesus. I may not know how to spell omnipresent, but I know how to give somebody a tract that leads them to the omnipresent Jesus. And that's our responsibility, is to take that one more shot. There's a story back in the early part of the 1900s right here in America. And this gentleman had purchased an old, what we would call a short bus, an old rounded school bus. Would only hold about 14 children. But he bought it so he could pick up children to take to Sunday school. And one Sunday morning, he was getting ready to leave, and he turned to his wife and said, listen, I'm not going by William's house today. William, the last time he was on the bus, he cut 2 seats. He said, I'm not picking William up today. And she said, oh, please, just this last Sunday. He said, I'm not going to. His Sunday school teacher doesn't want him back in class. He's the kid that says, oh, y'all, pray for me. He was a nuisance to everybody in church. And she said, dear, if you'll just pick him up one more Sunday, I'll never ask you to pick him up again. I said, okay. So he goes by, honks, nothing. So he goes up, knocks on the door, finishes getting William dressed, got him on the bus. William came to Sunday school that morning. And that morning, his Sunday school teacher shared with him the life of Jesus Christ. And you wouldn't know William by the name William, but Billy Graham got saved that morning. One more shot. I know God can raise up anyone, but where would America be today without Billy Graham? Where would the lost around the world be today? Billy Graham has probably, through his ministry, seen more people won to Jesus Christ than any other evangelistic ministry in our history. What if the bus driver had driven right on by Billy Graham's house? You see, he took one shot. You may only have one shot left. What are you going to do with that shot? You're going to sit back and say, well, I'll wait till later. I'll do it some other time. You know what? We don't know. We don't know. I don't know. Were there any fatalities so far at Bike Week? Have you heard of that? 4? Those people thought they were bulletproof. They thought they had all of their life to live. And everybody says, oh, if it happens, I'll call on God. I want you to know something. When it happens, it's like that. You don't even have this time to say, oh, Jesus, before it's. And the Bible speaks clearly about the thief coming in the middle of the night. Because you don't know when it's going to happen. And no one knows the day or the hour of Jesus' return. I want to believe it's coming and coming soon, though, Pastor. I'm ready. But you know what? There's millions of people around the world that haven't heard the gospel yet. We've got one shot to pour something into their lives to share Jesus with them. There's great talk today about the ministry of presence. And the ministry of presence is that sometimes you don't even have to say a word to people. You just have to be his hands extended. You just have to be the love of Jesus flowing out of you. You may never say a word and be able to witness to all kinds of people just simply how you live your lives. Are you living your life so that it's pleasing to God and making other people want to live like you do? There was a big old burly biker that I was talking to one day and sharing and telling him, that, church is important. It's important for your family. It's important, for you. And he said, yeah, but he said, I live next door to this guy over here, and he's an Assembly of God deacon. And he said, he's always out in the backyard screaming at his kids, kicks the dog, cusses like a sailor. He said, I really don't want to go to your Assembly of God church and become like him. He said, I don't do any of that stuff. And I thought this guy had one shot into this man's life, and now this guy didn't want anything to do with the Assembly of God people. And I knew I should have told him I was a Baptist when I met him, but I wasn't thinking fast enough. What are you going to do with your one shot? And it's just like today. You have one shot today to say, you know what, God, I've not been following you like I'm supposed to follow you. And you know what? You don't need me to tell you that you haven't been following God the way you're supposed to. Because you know whether you've been praying, whether you've been reading his word, whether you've been sharing your faith, whether you've been faithful to church, whether you've been giving him his tithe and your offerings. You know, nobody has to tell you that, because something inside you keeps gnawing at you saying, you didn't do it again today. And tithing, and really for me, I don't care whether you tithe or not, because the Bible says, would a man rob God? So you want to rob God, go ahead, but be sure to put your missions offering in, will you? Because I depend on that. But you know what? If you don't tithe, how are we going to keep the lights on? How are we going to pay to put new carpet in if we need to? How are we going to paint and make this place look nice and presentable to everybody? How are you going to pay pastor a salary and the labor is worthy of his hire? How are you going to keep the air conditioners running when it's so hot up here? All y'all don't know what heat is. But anyway, how are you going to do that if just a handful are biblically correct in giving their tithe over to the church. And I had a lady come up to me and say, well, Pastor, I don't like the way the church is spending their money. I said, well, ma'am, your responsibility is to put your offering and your tithe in that plate. God's going to hold the pastor and the board accountable for how they spend it.
That's right.
Don't hold back the tithe, because now you've punished yourself. You're disobedient to God. Be obedient to God and then pray, Lord, you convict those men how to spend those finances better. And if you think it's easy how to direct the finances of the church, you try and tell pastor, you know what, I'll serve on the board for you, pastor, and then figure out how tough it really is. Because you know what? There's never enough money at the end of the month. I always have more month than I have money when I was pastoring. And somebody else, like the VBS director, say, Pastor, can we have a couple $100 for, I'm saying, yeah, sure. Oh, Lord, poof, make some money. It just doesn't happen. But we've only got one shot, church. Take that shot. Don't sit back and say, I'm going to save this bullet till later. Take the shot today. Some of you are going to have opportunity to meet with somebody that's unsaved today. Take that shot. If you want some of these answer tracks, I've got them out in the bike. If you've got one, don't have one of my prayer cards, please take one. And remember to pray for us. I always forget to do that. Marianne says, you know, you got to get people to pray for you. Put it on your refrigerator, you won't have bugs for 6 months. Men, if you'll put it inside the refrigerator, you'll remember to pray for me a whole lot more than if it's outside the refrigerator. Never mind. Well, men are checking to see if the light still works. That's my excuse. Good excuse? An excuse is the skin of a reason stuffed full of a lie. You know that. So why aren't you taking the one shot that God's given you the opportunity to take? Don't make excuses to God. You remember, God knows the heart. And from the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And you know, there's days I have to tell the Lord, you know, Lord, I missed a great opportunity to speak into that person's life. And then I pray and say, God, please allow them someone else today to speak into their life, because I missed the chance. And I don't want them to die and go to hell. You know, I was telling Jason out in the parking lot, this was the least productive year as far as giving away coffee and water on the front porch. The people just weren't there. Now, we gave a lot of Book of Hope away. We gave a lot of tracts away. But coffee and water, they just weren't drinking it this year. But Friday, I went up to the top of the hill and talked to the Soldiers for Jesus, who have a booth up there. They said this was their most productive year. So you know what? I did my part. I took the shot God gave me, and we did our very best, and we personally don't feel like the results were as great as possible. But the Soldiers for Jesus are up there praising the Lord because they're having outstanding results. You know what? We're all in this together. So it doesn't matter. I'll do my part. And one of the things I love to tell the church today is let God be God and you be the faithful servant, okay? We can't be God. So quit trying. Let God be God. And how many of you call him Lord? You know what Lord means, don't you? Master? Supreme ruler?
Boss.
Oh, the B word. Boss. Controller. The guy from Hawaii told me he's the head chapabobo. Okay? However you place him, that you know that's the top deal. Well, if he's the Lord, then you can never say no.
That's right on.
When you say yes, Lord, it's because, yes, you're my Lord. I'm obedient. I'm doing. When you say no, then don't say Lord after it. Because when you tell God no, he's no longer your Lord.
That's right.
When God says, I want you to witness to that person, you say, oh, you know, he's awful big and tattooed and pierced. And so what you're saying is, you're not my Lord anymore. I don't want to do that. Matter of fact, the bigger they are, the more tattooed and pierced they are, the more I want to go talk to them. Because once you start talking to them, what are their wimpy little friends going to do? Nothing. Nothing. Had two Hell's Angels stop by. And they were walking by, and one of the guys on the front porch, Johnny G, said, hey, you guys want some water? These were black guys. The guy turned and looked, and his buddy, being the smartest guy that was with him, said, free coffee and water. read the 4x8 sign we have hanging out there. Sharp pencil in this box. Nudged his buddy and said, I got free coffee and water there. I said, wow. And one guy says, yeah. And he turned and came up on the porch, got a glass of water, and stood there and talked to me for about 10 minutes. And he said, why are you doing this? I said, because if Jesus was here today, this is what he'd be doing. He said, do you really believe that? I said, yes, I do. Because that's what Jesus did when he was on earth. And I said, I want you to know, you probably read the tract, Jesus would have ridden a Harley. I said, in biblical days, he probably did. He rode a Harley, I'm sure, because he walked everywhere. Now, Lord, have favor over my Harley today. How many times does it talk about Jesus and water? How about the woman at the well? How about him being the living water? And so if we can give somebody a cool drink. And the guy said, well, you really believe that? And I said, I really do believe that. He said, well, why are you here though? I said, so I could tell you that today. He said, you mean that, don't you? I said, as much as you mean that tattoo you got. He had a tattoo on the back of his hand that was a raised, he had an implant. That the Hells Angels have a diamond shape that says 81. 81 is, 8 is for the letter H, 1 is for the letter A. That's why you see the 81, or you'll see a support 81 t-shirts. He had it raised about a half inch, something placed under his skin, and then tattooed on that was the 81. I said, I believe that as much as you believe your tattoo. He said, you're sold out. I said, as much as you're sold out to being a Hells Angel. He said, man, you can't be sold out to something that you can't see. I said, well, tell me what you see other than some other guys running around with Hell's Angel on their back. What do you see? And I said, when they're not there, can you sense that they're there? No. I said, Jesus is standing here on the porch with us. He said, you believe that? I said, don't you feel him? I said, as a matter, he's got his arms around you right now. Don't you realize that? He said, really? I said, yeah, he loves you. And nothing you can ever do will make him stop loving you. I said, he may not like some of the things we do from time to time, but he loves us. I want you to know, kids, this is one important shot that I had this week. To speak into a Hell's Angel. So he got ready to leave. Thanked me for the water. Now his buddy sat on the step the whole time. And he had his cell phone like this, but he wasn't talking to anybody. He was listening to every word I said. Acting like he was on the phone so he couldn't come up on the porch because he knew it was a Jesus thing. When he got ready to leave, he said, thanks for the water and thanks for what you're doing. And turned and hugged me.
Glory to God.
This guy needed to use our shower. A week ago, he needed to use the shower. And his Levi's needed the oil change a few days ago, too. But you know what? I took my one shot and loved on this guy that nobody else wants to love on. What are you going to do with your one shot? I know Pastor wants a few minutes here, but you do that, Pastor, and then I'll close, if you don't mind.